Hello, welcome to the SwineTime podcast here at Pipestone. I'm your host, Dr. Spencer Wayne. I'm one of the staff veterinarians here. I'm also one of the owners of Pipestone Holdings, and I have the great pleasure and opportunity to interview different people from both within our company and outside our company to talk about interesting things. And today, I have a repeat guest. I have Dr. Scott D., who has had a few different titles and positions within our company, and is actually getting ready to slow down in his daily duties pretty soon, but he was available, and he's always got good information to share, so I thought I don't want to waste the opportunity. Let's have Scott come and talk to us here for a little bit. So welcome, Scott. Glad you're here.
Thanks, Spencer. I like these a lot, so appreciate it.
Yeah, Scott is actually he's an old roommate of mine, not from college, but from here in Pipestone, because we both had families elsewhere, and we shared an apartment that your wife luckily was able to line up for us, so that was that was good.
Worked out well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Scott, you didn't come alone. Nobody can see this if they're listening, but you have a dog with you. So if there's a bark or a whine sound in the back, it's not Abby, our producer, or Scott or me. It's a dog that's Scott's got with him today.
Yeah, Matilda is here. She's a Scottish Terrier, almost 2 years old. And so, yeah, if you hear any whining in the background, it's her.
Well, let's get to it. When I think about what you've done, at least recently, of great impact, it had a lot to do with feed biosecurity, and in particular, what we call mitigants. And so if anybody's listening out there and they're not tuned in, can you describe what a feed mitigant is a little bit and maybe what's been new in the last year?
Feed is a vehicle, a real vehicle. It's a real risk for viral movement from place to place, and that's new knowledge. That's original thought. So with that in mind, the question is, what do you do about it? And that's where you're talking now. What's a feed mitigant, and what does that all entail? So the thought was, well, if the viruses are in the feed, how can we kill them? That's as simple as that. And we thought, well, what if we added something to the feed? What if we put in a product that could lower the pH or could somehow stop the virus from living for a period, and neutralize it basically?
Is it just the pH, or are there other chemical things happening?
No, good question. It's kind of hard to say. No one really knows a lot of the mechanisms of the feed additives that have been tested. pH is one, maybe immune enhancement is another, but it's a hypothesis. No one's really understands the mechanism of how it works, but in our projects that we tested, at least 15 or maybe now almost close to 20 products that we've put into feed. We've spiked it with viruses. We've fed it to pigs under experimental conditions, and we've shown, except for one product, all having a benefit of reducing that viral risk. So somehow the pigs are protected from getting infected or from seeing clinical disease. So a feed mitigant is an additive to prevent the clinical expression of a virus in feed.
Yeah, and so I'd see you kick out some information like, hey, we tested these products, looks like they work at varying degrees, but some significant and noticeable impact on how much got transmitted through feed. That was kind of phase one of what you could see happening from my point of view. But then you'd go out in the field and you'd be with this guy that's from this feed company working with these clients, and he's got this product put in, and, oh, what's that? Well, it's the mitigant. Okay, well, which one is it? Well, it's so-and-so. And I'm thinking, is that one on the list? And he goes, yeah, it's from Scott's list. And okay. And then, well, how do you decide? And it was the cheapest one or the most economical that also fit the bill. And so you'd see it being applied out there in the form of, it was approved by Scott, and basically what you found with your research. And then it was put into the farms, and then it was so much per ton, and the farmer was weighing that as a cost of insurance risk, kind of I'm buying this thing to reduce my chances of breaking with PRRS, and it was an economic decision at that point.
Mm-hmm.
That
exactly.
accurately said how it got rolled out.
Very accurate. I appreciate the point you raised about approved by Scott, quote unquote. So these aren't approved by the FDA. These are products that we've tested. They don't have a label claim for antiviral effect. They've got a claim for gut health, better growth, blah, blah, blah. So we're a little off label here, and I think that's for the producers. They need to understand that. But we clearly showed that across, at least 14 or 15 of these products, they had an antiviral effect. And then it was up to the individual at the farm to pick the one he or she wanted to use based on, as you alluded to, cost, milling capabilities, those types of things. And so the nice thing about the work we did, it showed there were many options on the table for producers, and then the individuals could go and make their own decisions based on what they could manage at their mills.
Yeah, and most of these are some kind of an acid. Is that right? Except for the formaldehyde products. These are all some kind of a medium chain fatty acid or a straight organic acid or something to that nature.
Yes, there's kind of three major buckets of additives based on their chemical composition. One, as you mentioned, formaldehyde, like a Salcurb product, is quite familiar to many. It's actually got a label for salmonella control. So it's really the only one that's got a official label for controlling a pathogen, in this case salmonella, which is bacterial, not viral. But that's one bucket. The other one would be the organic acids, as you alluded to, either single acids or combinations of acids, which we tested. And then there's, as you mentioned, the medium chain fatty acids, and those are many different kinds of products. They could what we call short chain, long chain, or medium chain fatty acids. And there could be individual products or blends of products. And so we've tested all of those compositions. And that's where we come up with the statement, other than one product, they all seem to have some beneficial effect.
Mm-hmm. And I remember that one product, and you said it was way cheaper. And we just figured out they probably diluted whatever the normal product was way down.
Yep.
So that's why it didn't work. Maybe that's the case or not.
Could be as Vigilex.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we approached them to test their product in our model, and they agreed, and then the last minute they backed out. But there were several producers using it because as it was quite cost effective. It was cheap, so they wanted to test it, and so they contributed some capital to the project, and so we ran it, and we found out it was no different than the control group. So it didn't have any effect at all.
Yeah. Okay. So the final question on the mitigants is, it seems like it's been done, as far as like it's been beat to death. Is maybe not, but that's the question for you: is there more on the horizon? Is this going to be something that, next year we're testing these products, which are totally different, or is it kind of mature and here's the products you got, they all kind of work? There you go. Where's it sit?
Exactly. So I think it's a very mature subject, and it really comes down to economics. So the formaldehyde-based products may be $6 to $8 a ton. The organic acids may be, $15 a ton. Where the work is still kind of in progress is in the medium chains, because they were $60 a ton originally, which is like
saying, I don't know if I want to put this stuff in. It costs
Yeah.
more than I want. It's not like it's a buck a ton. It's
Yeah.
it's $16 a ton.
Yeah, it adds up. It adds up.
So, okay, probably can wrap that up as a topic. But then the next would be related to it, the case of Seneca Valley virus. And I know some details I think I'm not supposed to share it, and I know that there's some privacy involved, so I'll just stop there and say Seneca Valley virus in a country that didn't have it. They got it from another country that had it through feed. And so I'll turn it over to you. Maybe you can describe that as an illustration.
Yeah, this is really an important topic because of all the work we've done for the last 8 years. It's all been laboratory based, where we've set up experiments and purposely contaminated feed, and then put them through a journey to see if they would survive and infect pigs. But it was all in the lab. And that was a criticism, say, from the APHIS, USDA APHIS, that, well, this is just a laboratory experiment. We need what we call an epilink, a real-world event where we saw a virus infect a group of pigs through a novel route. And that's what happened in this case, which we've published. We actually worked with a country that had never experienced Seneca virus in their entire national pig herd. And like you said, they imported soybean meal, in this case, from a known positive country. And at the time they fed that soy, they began to see vesicles on the nose and mouth and the legs of the pig. And they tested that and found out it was Seneca virus. It wasn't FMD, because Seneca's a FMD cousin, so to speak, which was a good thing. It's not a foot and mouth. But this actually showed that feed could come from one country to another country and transfer a virus. And this was not an experiment. This was an actual event that happened in the real world. Yeah. And so it was critical that we wrote this up. So we published this without any identification of who was who, which is what the countries requested. They said we could publish their data and tell their story without breaching confidentiality. So that's why I can't tell you where it happened.
The conversation. Yeah. So I remember you mentioning this, that, okay, came from a country that had it, Seneca Valley, came to a country that didn't, you found it. But a smoking gun would have been, you tested the feed as it was stored after arrival to the country, and it was positive. There was some testing of the actual feed ingredient as it came in. That's correct, right?
That is correct.
That's the smoking gun. There's like came from a country, and we could test it and find it in the feed that was coming in.
Yep. The soy meal import was evaluated by the veterinarians in the company that got contaminated, and they found the virus. And they fed that feed to pigs, and the pigs got sick. So they not only found the virus, the nucleic acid of the virus, they actually demonstrated that it was alive and well and could infect pigs after it was consumed.
Yeah, so they became infected. Then all the investigation. Then they took some of the feed and then they fed it to an experimental group and showed, yeah, sure enough, that's probably what happened when we noticed it the first time was we fed this stuff. So
they didn't feed it as an experiment. They actually fed it, saw the clinical signs, and then investigated and found the virus in the lesions as well as the virus in the feed itself.
I thought they proved it after the fact too by feeding a group of pigs with some positive feed.
No, they had enough in their minds. They had enough to prove the case that we got the virus from this other country through the importation of this soybean meal, and it was alive.
Good to clarify then.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So then that leads us to African swine fever, or other viruses, but African swine fever in particular sits there in the Caribbean, and then we have this risk of getting it, and then how much of that is feed related? Is that how we're going to get it if we do? Comment on that, because like how would that make its way here? Is that a big feed risk due to our local neighbor, or is that a China import feed risk? Or go there.
Yeah, the interesting thing about China is the Chinese imports of, say, soy-based products have really dropped. And so we know that soy is the most protective ingredient. And that was always the big bullseye, is that we were bringing soybean meal in from China. Well, that's kind of tailed off with all of the publicity of this work. Now we still bring the products, soy-based products, in from India, Ukraine, and Russia, which are all three very ASF-positive countries. But to your point about the Dominican, yeah, we import products from the Dominican. We import a lot of things from Hispaniola, as it's called, Haiti and Dominican. Not so much feed, although we do. Yeah. Some soy comes in from that area. But there's a lot of other products that come in, which concern me because they're potential fomites to bring the virus, say, on a tote bag, for example, from an infected country. And it's only 800 miles away from Florida.
Right. And that shocked me that we were actually importing anything from there. I didn't realize there was an import route. I also remember the discussion of China in the early days of ASF. They said that somebody had gone through and said, well, we sampled people's shoes when they were at a wedding. We did all this random non-agriculture related sampling, and it was kind of everywhere, which just scares you. Then you think, well, then we're not worried about food or feed type things coming up. We're worried about somebody's shoes potentially even coming up from Dominican. Anytime
you have a new virus introduction to a country, you have a lot of virus excretion from all these naive pigs getting infected, which is exactly what we saw with PED. And that's a great way to contaminate basically the environment within the farm, outside of the farm, the ground, the air, the vehicles, the people. With all that infectious virus in that pig population it's getting excreted on aerosol particles or dust particles coming from that farm. It just seeds down the whole area.
Yeah.
And that's what happened in China with ASF to begin with.
Yeah.
And also PED.
Well, I wonder if I think about the risk of Seneca Valley in the countries you were talking about earlier, would mitigated feed have stopped that?
Oh, yeah.
You think that confidence that whatever was coming in the form of soybean meal that was contaminated would have been stopped?
It would have been stopped.
Okay.
Yep. We've got a lot of data on these mitigants, and they've tested both against Seneca, PRRS, and PED, which are the pathogens I can work with because they're called level 2 pathogens. I can't work with ASF or FMD. Those are special facility pathogens. But the products we tested we used Seneca, we used PED and PRRS as our viruses to evaluate the effectiveness.
Okay. Scott, rounding out the end here, can you comment on responsible imports as a concept, and then probably take that into SHIP, the Swine Health Improvement Program? And if you can kind of button the whole thing up with probably some more tactical things that are being done.
Yeah. So responsible imports is an idea that Luke Minion, our CEO, had several years ago, and he was looking at the science, and he was saying, well, some of these products that we import, certain vitamins, amino acids and things, and the other side of it, they're so much cheaper that if the farmer can buy them cheaper, they can save a lot of money on feed cost. And so he said, how do we do this safely? And so that's where the idea came of, let's start treating feed almost like breeding stock. And so the manufacturer is audited, say it's in China or wherever, and then products comes over to the United States in one-time use tote bags in sealed containers. They go into a warehouse where they sit for 30 days at 75 degrees Fahrenheit, where time and temperature will reduce the virus survival.
You mentioned the FDA CVM is put in a specific guideline to reference some of this risk, which is a big deal because you're showing all this evidence, and farmers are saying, "Oh, that's real," and everybody's saying that's real, and other countries are saying that's real, and our own government saying, well, "We don't know, just business as usual. We're not going to stop anything. We're not going to make any changes to how we look at importing ingredients."
That's true. So we've got Canada, Australia, and Denmark now have national programs where their federal agencies oversee how products are brought in and they're treated in a certain way, like we've talked about. We don't have that from the USDA side. However, from the, as you said, the FDA CVM, Center for Veterinary Medicine, they've just reworded their guidance for industry number 245, which is how they talk about risks of animal feed. And historically, it's been salmonella as a risk, toxoplasmosis, maybe mycotoxins, but now they've added viruses as hazards as well. So the viruses, for the first time, have been included in this language, which is a huge deal. It may not sound like much, but if you realize how long it takes and how much work it takes to change the language of these federal documents, it's like moving a mountain. So the first time now we've got a federal agency, at least one of the two major, FDA, Center for Veterinary Medicine. Good for them.
So basically that sets the stage for, at least it's been recognized as that being a specific risk. And so if you say, well, we got to actually change some policy, well, then you can reference existing technical guidance.
Yeah, technical literature. And that's where I think we've got the U.S. Swine Health Improvement Plan, U.S. SHIP coming, which has a feed risk biosecurity platform, along with the other things it wants to evaluate, like surveillance and site biosecurity and those types of things. For a producer to be certified as SHIP, negative for ASF and classical swine fever, they have to have a biosecurity plan for feed. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that's the best way we've got to bring this idea to the industry and get the entire U.S. industry practicing something like that.
Yeah. Not through our government agencies, but through producers, figuring out how to be better coordinated and getting it done.
Exactly. Kind of ironic, but that's what it looks like it's going to happen.
Yeah. You got a great dog, Scott.
Yeah, she's something's wrong. Matilda, what's wrong?
Well, we're just about done.
We're almost done.
In the final few minutes here, Scott. I just got to listen to you in what we call our culture camp, which is kind of an interview of some cool thing within the company. And for an hour, Luke recounted all the stories and your history. And it was a great history lesson for just understanding a lot of things that we've been through with you. I don't know if you wanted to comment on your impending retirement, kind of some thoughts on the last few years here, your time at the university and your time practicing before that elsewhere. Or just I'd turn it over to you for...
Yeah.
Tell us about yourself and what you're proud of and what you're heading to.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I'm going into a phased retirement program. I've been a veterinarian now for 35 years, and Luke and I worked out a plan that for the next couple of years I'll go into a reduced, like a 50% appointment, and focus on specific projects and kind of leave the day-to-day behind to people more in the know like you. So I'm going to focus on some things. I think it's a great way to conclude my career. I couldn't go cold turkey. I'd probably drink too much if I just sat around. So I got to do something to kind of let my brain settle down and get used to the fact of it's time to slow down a little bit, because I've been doing this for a long time. And the disadvantage of my career has been I haven't spent a lot of time with my wife. She's been taking care of kids. I've been running around. And now we get a chance to be together. So I'm looking forward to it. That's going to be a lot of fun. So this, to me, being at Pipestone is like the perfect way to end my time in the profession, which, as you know, began as a practitioner, then a professor, and now as a research director. So to me, it's like perfect. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, I remember I was a student, and I was a student at the Swine Vet Center in St. Peter, and there was a meeting, like a supper meeting, to introduce the candidates for the faculty positions, and you were brought down by, I don't remember who. You came down with some, like Bob Morrison would have been there,
Yeah,
some other people.
Bob was there, I think.
And I just remember all the vets around the table, like the swine practitioners. It would have been the Swine Vet Center guys and Tom Wetzel at that time. And it was like, Scott, what about this and this? And, and that was, then you became my professor after that, because I was back at school. But that's pretty cool to watch. That's where I first met you, was there.
Yeah.
And now we live in the town where you started practicing.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. So I appreciate everything you've done for those producers in that area. So thank you for that. But it's been a great starting point, West Central Minnesota, then to the swine group with Carlos and Hansu, Al Lehman, Bob, and be part of that group. And then to come to Pipestone as the kind of the final glide, using all the information we've built up and we've developed as biosecurity protocols to protect farms and help farmers. So that's kind of what it's all about.
Yeah. Okay. To wrap it up, do have a question about our mission statement. And our mission statement is helping the farmers of today build the farms of tomorrow. And so in the context of your body of work here, or maybe even just the feed mitigant, wherever you want to take it to, how do you view your work here fitting into that mission statement?
Yes. So it's the farms of today and tomorrow. So I would say that the things I have done help the farmer implement a biosecurity plan to protect their herd against domestic viruses as well as potentially foreign animal disease. So if I look at the things we've done, we've studied mechanical spread of the viruses through trucks and fomites and supplies. We know how to intervene there, and a lot of producers are doing that. Then the next level was the aerosol risk, where we showed that airborne transmission can occur of PRRS virus, and filters worked. And so you put that on top of your mechanical risk. And then most recently now with the feed, we've shown that that's another risk factor. And here's how you would ameliorate that risk through the use of an additive, for example, or responsible imports, which I think this is a really nice full circle how this conversation's gone, because that's how you opened it up.
Yeah. I think if I distill that down, it's identify a problem, find a solution, and then find a way to implement it.
Exactly. That is science-based, and it has enough rigor. It's been replicated enough. You can do stats on it. It's not just a swag. It's a real event.
Yeah. That's where, it's funny because having you as our research director was like showing up at Gettysburg with a bunch of M16s and tanks and stuff like it. Just, you had a lot of power you brought to the way we looked at data and research. Yeah. So anyway, thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Spencer.
Appreciate your time here.
Yeah, thank you.
SwineTime podcast was created for the pork industry and individual pork producers around the country. Hosted by me, Dr. Spencer Wayne, with the PIPESTONE Veterinary Services. The podcast contains pork industry news, advancements in animal care, and how to enhance your productivity. Monthly podcasts are available on Spotify, Google Music, iTunes, Anchor, and on www.pipestone.com.